Hi, and welcome to our interview with Kelly Gregory. You guys are really going to enjoy this interview. She's got a lot of information to share with you. Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. If you could just take a minute and introduce yourself and tell the girls a little bit about what it is that you do.
You're absolutely welcome. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Christina. So I am Kelly Gregory, and currently I work for a company called Chevron Corporation. I've been with them approximately 23 years, and I've been in the industry about 3 decades. And my current role with the company is known as Strategic Workforce Management Implementation Lead. And a brief description about what I do in that space. I'm part of a project management center of expertise. We call it a COE. It's a very small group within the organization, and our focus is basically as internal employee consultants to help support our global major capital projects, and that's the multi-billion-dollar type projects all around the world. And while I've done this type of consulting work and supportive work within the COE for several years, both in information technology and project services, which is a lot of different functional spaces within the projects. Right now, my focus is on strategic workforce management. So how to get the project set up from a people perspective, and helping to support the project and that mobilization and demobilization and the vacancies on the project.
Very cool. That sounds very big, is what it sounds like to me when you're talking about that. Like there's a lot of pieces to have to manage within your responsibilities, I would imagine.
There are a lot of, I call it a major puzzle maker. We solve problems before they become problems, and like to simplify things because things a lot of times are much more complex than they really need to be, even with very large projects, which you would normally think is complex, and they are. But I've got just a very small little tiny part of the puzzle to do my job to make other things a little more simple.
Very cool. So, like, what motivated you to enter into this line of work? Like, is this something that, you've always known that you wanted to do, or no, this was something that I fell into, or how did that happen?
Yeah, interesting question. So, no, I didn't grow up saying that I was going to be a strategic workforce management implementation lead. Titles for me are totally aside. I'm not really motivated by the title. I'm really motivated by the work, and that it's passionate for me and fun, and that it's something that's deemed valuable by others. So I very much like to simplify things, as I noted. And so how did I get to where I am right now and into this specific role? It really started as a young girl. My family has been in the construction industry and energy industry for like a century. It goes back many generations. And being a little girl in the 70s and 80s, my dad working in the refineries and out in the fields, and my mom in pipeline and sales. I had that opportunity to learn from them and to see the different types of roles that were available. So I always knew that I would be basically an energy brat, or have something to do with construction. And I kind of blame it on Legos and building houses for my Barbies. That kind of solidified things. And then when I got to go out to the field and see things and touch things, that really was very cool for me. And being a girl in that space even made it cooler because there wasn't very many. But I didn't know later that it was going to make it harder. Yeah, so that's really where it came from, is the background with the family, and just having a lot of diverse, open opportunity and being told you can do whatever you want to do.
That's really cool. I never even really thought about the fact that like this being something, because when I heard that you know that you were at Chevron and everything, like, well, that's really awesome, and but never really thought of like you coming up and saying that, you know, this is something that's been in our family for, you know, like over a century, and like that's really very cool to think about the fact that, you know, this is like almost like a family business that you're continuing on with, kind of.
That's right. And my there were welders and construction workers in New York. I came from New York, and the family were immigrants from Ireland, and that was the industry that was chosen, and everybody evolved in that different space. My brother's in safety in the industry. I've got people that are in sales in the industry. There's still welders in the industry, and yeah, it's a big family of those that are in this area. Specific for me, getting to workforce management at Chevron in a really large company, it was not a direct, I'm going to go to school and go to school for business and start here necessarily. I was really inspired in high school actually by, I was always in some sort of STEM classes. And back then they didn't really call them STEM classes. It was higher math and sciences. But then it got their own cool acronym later in life. But I had a teacher in high school in Baytown, and I was in the CAD CAM classes and drafting classes and learning how to do the drafting, and it inspired me to take notice that, wow, I want to be an architect. I want to design things. I want to design houses. Like I said, the Legos with the Barbies, design houses and build bridges. And I got an internship my senior year, and they're in Baytown with some civil engineers, and they taught me a lot more. And so the path just kept going, and I just took the opportunities where the doors opened, and learned, and just kept learning.
And I think that's really a really good point to bring up, is that sometimes there the direct path that you can take, you know, to go to a career, absolutely. But a lot of times the way that we end up in the careers that we're in is because we take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to us. We have different experiences that lead us a little bit differently. I mean, we're still getting to the same place that we wanted to be, but we're just getting there a little bit differently. And I think that's really something important for us to share with the high school girls that we're talking with, is that, you know, if you're a big planner, that's great, but realize that it may not end up being exactly the way that you think that it's going to be.
Absolutely. And funny thing is that where I got that passion to be an architect, and then did my learning to figure out, well, how do I do that now? And then when I learned that it was 8 years of college, I said, oh no. I said 8 more years of school. So I said, let me go down the engineering path. That's 4 years. Nothing bad about engineers, of course. Love them because I work with them all the time. But yeah, architects, 8 years, engineers, 4 years. I didn't understand that. And I said, no, I'm not going to do 8 more years of college before I start working. And so what's funny though now is, here in my 50s, had I known this back then when I was 16, 17 and making a choice based on the number of years of college, I'm still going to school. And 6 degrees later, I literally am continuing to go to school. And so I may have had a different choice then if I knew that I was going to love higher education like I do. So yeah, it was a major shift.
I'm sure. And I think that's really important though too, is the fact that when you graduate from college, that's not where the education stops. That there's still classes that you're going to be taking, there's still trainings that you're going to do, and continuing that education to continue to learn. And if you don't, well, then you're going to end up stagnating in whatever career path that you're taking. So it's really important, I think, for our young ladies to realize that no, the education does continue.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, and things change around you too. There's external things that occur that that you don't have controls over. And it didn't, in my path, I would say that that helped to make those curves occur in my path. And while those curves may have been a little scary because you had to make a decision at that point, and it was okay. It was totally fine. But I wouldn't be where I am right now if those curves and shifts didn't occur. And, you know, there obviously was a plan for me that I was not privy to from higher above there, but it worked out just fine, and it was not a straight path. So I definitely would encourage those that think that it's going to be a straight path. Maybe it will, and maybe it won't, and it's going to be okay. I know that whenever it wasn't even a straight path in my first round in going to college, I went for a few years and had my first child, and then took a break and went back and finished. And the way that I applied it, though, also wasn't traditional in kicking off engineering, because of those times that we were in the 80s, and female in engineering and in that kind of industry here in Houston, it wasn't as simple as the encouragement I got from family saying, hey, you can do anything. The answer was I could do anything. It was the environment going to accept me in doing anything? And so that was some things that I had to learn and journey through as well. And so I selected and took the path of taking my knowledge and my passion for that industry into the business side, and to focus on being really good in the business aspect of that industry. And so, and it worked out well. It worked out well.
So, question that I have for you, because engineering does tend to be a little bit more male dominated in field for sure. And you kind of brought up that, you know, when you first were in it in the 80s, and you've been in for, you know, a little bit of time now. Have you seen a change where it's easier for women to enter into the field? It's a little bit more accepting. Women are a little bit more accepted into the industry, or are there still some challenges to be met there? What do you think?
There's absolutely some challenges. I would say that we've come a long way since the 80s. I'm personally not an engineer and never was licensed as an engineer. And that's where my focus and my choice was, let me take this path in the business side of working with the engineers in the industry. Across the board, though, I know that I've selected companies to work for. I was very fortunate to be accepted into those companies where I've come to know on my resume, because I was looking for places that they were much more accepting in women and the diversity and the inclusion, and that they took a really big focus in that space. So I did my research before I applied to certain positions and to certain companies. There's definitely still growth in that space to happen for women and for the acceptances, but I think they've come a long way. We have come a long way.
Well, I think that's a really good tip, I think, for the young ladies out there who are looking at entering into, whether it's engineering or a different kind of field that has in the past been a little bit sort of on that male-dominated side, to do the research on the companies, because definitely there are companies out there that are, I don't know what the phrase that I want to use, but like a little bit more like open-minded, I guess maybe is the word, or just, you know, like supportive. Supportive is the word that I'm looking for. Supportive for anyone who wants to come into that industry and work. So I definitely think that that's a really good tip, is to do the research on the companies that you're going to be applying for, you know, and see what's going to be the good fit for you.
Absolutely. And aligning of those values and what you expect and where you can see yourself for a long time. I had no expectation in the generation that I was in, post baby boomers prior to we're considered the Gen Xers, right? It's a small little generation. And I had no knowledge or thought that I would be with any one company for more than 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And because we were just that kind of generation to go in, work for 4 or 5 years, get out of it what you get out of it, and then move on. And I did that with a few of I like I said, I had to have a fortunate resume with General Electric and Merrill Lynch and some great big companies, and I learned a lot, but was able to move through. And then when I came to my next little venture of where am I going to go next? What am I going to do with this part? Where is my growth pattern in this industry? I did kind of my shopping of the next role. I had gone back to school and got a business degree in human resources management as well as technology management, because I saw that the focus forward was going to be in technology, right? This is this new big boom that was coming through, transformational around technology. And I wanted to have those credentials. And I went to look for the right position, and Texaco was the company that I sought after. There was a few really very specific reasons to go to Texaco at that time. And I was really excited to get the job offer, and it was as a business analyst. And it was in the human resources. It was HRIS. So I got to use the best of both worlds, the HR side as well as my IS. I was basically a translator. I knew HR and what they needed and could speak HR with the HR people. And when I say that I knew what they needed, I'm talking about technology. And then I would turn and I would go and deliver these requirements and specifications of what we needed technology to build for human resources. And this was at Texaco in the energy business. And so, like I said, kind of that business analyst translator between the two. And so that's how I got kicked off into Chevron, because then Chevron and Texaco merged. And after 23 years, I've had 10 different positions within the company.
Very cool. And I like that whole, like the translator being able to do that. I'm like, that sounds like a whole lot of fun, actually.
Right. And just like I said at the very beginning, one of my passions is really trying to find the value in what I'm doing and how I'm helping the part of the business in being more efficient, finding the value in how do we get the business done in a more simple manner, and being able to utilize the skill sets that I have and finding that uniqueness in what I can help to deliver. And so in that part of my career, it was that HR knowledge and the IT knowledge, and they both have fared me well throughout my career path.
So now within your career path, you've talked about how you had the little windings and everything like that. And we brushed, I think, a little bit on some of the challenges and everything. But what do you think throughout your career path has been maybe the biggest thing that you've struggled with, and how did you handle it?
Yeah. So for me, on a struggle, I mean, this may sound blasé, but it's the time. And what I mean about the time is that being a person that's really passionate about the continued learning and being relevant, as well as being wanting to stay balanced and true to myself and to my family, that all has to balance some way, and we're one person. So it's not really that there was necessarily a struggle in the career per se. It was, how do I do it all? Because I want to do it all, but I want to have it in such a balanced way that how do I do it without breaking?
Yeah.
Right. And still deliver with value, right?
So then how have you found that balance? How have you managed to do that? Or
Yes.
have
And have I, right? So I do get feedback quite often about that very thing that people have observed, where I am very balanced. So I feel like I do portray that, and I would say very low stress, and I would say I have first and foremost, I do take personal time and count my me time very passionately, and I value it very highly. And I feel that it's more important than any of my other time with anywhere else, because if I'm not personally giving myself that personal time that I need, I can't give to anybody else completely. Anybody else being even a company, family, etc. So I've got to make sure that that me time is balanced. So for me, and how do I do that? So from a tactical perspective, I am a scheduler planner. I'm the ultimate scheduler planner. I've mentored people how I do that. And, people look at my calendar and I've got all different colors and they're color coded. I've been doing it for decades. And I also am okay. And even though I'm a scheduler planner, I'm not what I would call a rigid one, that once it is on the schedule and the plan, it's visible to me, and it might be a deliverable either to myself or to others to work. So I know that it's there, but there's got to be some flexibility and be okay with, it's got to move, and being okay and saying, I just can't do that right then. I've got to shift that, but still balancing that time. Yeah. So the big thing is that scheduler planner, having it visible to me and being dedicated to honoring your self time.
I think that's really important. I know that is something that I struggle with as well. And a lot of the women that I know, I think we try to feel like we can do it all, take it all on and everything. But it's the whole, like, put your oxygen mask on first. Like you said, if you're not taking care of you, you can't possibly do your best anywhere else. So
I'm totally down with the oxygen mask thing. And I do have a funny little story that supports this. I had one gentleman who was working with me on one of my project teams, and he was an architect. Of course, I had to tell him my architect story, right? But he called on a Friday, and I work 4 days a week, and I'm off on Friday. So I'm 4 days on, 3 days off, basically for many years. And he called on a Friday, and it was early, and he said, or texted something. It was, "Are you up yet?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm up." I said, "Why?" "Well, it's Friday. It's your day off. Thought you sleep in." I said, "No." I'll never forget. I said, "No, this is my weekend. This is my days off. I work at least 50 hours a week, and I play just as hard. I want to get up just as early. If I do that for my work, I want to get up early and have my full day for the things that I want to do for me."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really true too, of like being flexible, but then absolutely honoring that time that you set aside for yourself is really important. So it's a great tip. I love so do you do time blocking? Is that what you
I do.
Yeah. So ladies,
time blocking, I color code things. There's a family calendar, there's a summer calendar, there's a Kelly calendar, and they all integrate now because, yes, I've got that tech background and I utilize the tools that make me not have to think about everything 100% of the time.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great tip. So we've talked about the struggle. What has maybe been the most rewarding part of your career path?
So for me, I shared that I thought that I would be jumping around jobs, not in a negative way, but learning what I need to do from one company in 4 years or so, and then jumping to another one. And I thought going into it that that's the way that it really was done. Otherwise you'd be with, the same company, and ooh, how boring that would be. And I said at the very beginning that, wow, I'm with the Chevron company for 23 years. And so for me, reward is the diversity that I was able to get and still in the industry and the company, and being able to change positions every few years and continue to learn even within the same company and not having to move around. So that was something that was really new and aha for me, that I don't have to move around to get out of that. And Chevron is fantastic in that space. And they're not the only company that does that, just where I'm coming from on that. So the diversity in my career, I would say that it's extremely rewarding. I've always gotten something out of the positions that I'm in. I'm able to move around positions. The global mobility capability that I have, in the sense of working with so many people around the world and building those relationships. And as well as the people right there on the same hallway with me. But that the time zones, I'm working, yes, at nighttime, but it's Australia morning, and working with the people in Australia and Nigeria and in Kazakhstan. And so knowing that the work that I'm doing and the relationships that I'm building with these others are making an impact. Where it's fun. There's a lot of passion. When there's not passion and fun left in it, then I know that it's time for me to do something else. But there's still a lot of that.
Now, I don't want to forget this, because we were talking about it prior to recording our interview, about some of the different jobs that are within this particular industry that the girls may not know about. And they may not be, a lot of them aren't ones that you have done, but you know about them. So do you want to share what some of those career paths might be, especially ones that maybe the girls don't know about or don't even think about?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm also part of an organization called NAWIC, the National Association of Women in Construction, and specifically here in the Houston chapter. And in the last 2 years, a little bit more, I've been on the board of directors as a director and some committee chair, and work with a lot of great women in this industry through that network, that association. And we have people that within the construction and the energy industry, et cetera, that are in residential building, they're in sales, or they're working in refineries, boots on ground. They're engineers that are building those bridges. They're designers, they're interior designers, but that's part of it's necessary to do space planning and interior design for buildings, and for there's marine people, there's marine, not just engineers, but consultants and fabricators that help to build things. There's mechanical, the HVAC area, and electricians. There's just so much that's available in that space, and it's growing. And because women want to know and want to be part of this growing essential industry.
Absolutely. That's so cool to think about all those different career paths that are all within one particular industry. And I also want to point out to the girls too that she talked about NAWIC. No matter what field you go into, there are going to be professional organizations for you to get plugged into, and to make sure that you do that. It's a great way for you to grow as an individual, to grow within your career, to find career mentors and everything. So really look for those kind of organizations within whatever career path you take. So
that's really important to know and to grow with those, because you can learn so much more about the different career paths, obtain mentoring, and formal mentoring and informal mentoring. There's student chapters that are available at the community colleges, the trade schools, the universities. I mean, there's a lot of those connections with a lot of resources to be able to get help from, and to get some input and some guidance. But there's also, like with NAWIC, we have scholarships availability. And so if you're involved in, if you select a career path like in construction management or engineering, NAWIC supports scholarships, and they do it at the national level as well as the chapter level. And so that's real important to know, whatever field that you wind up going into, seeking out that professional association to learn more about that.
Absolutely. Great tips.
Yeah.
So for our last question, how has, like, when you first were getting into the field, launching into your career and everything, you had an idea of what things were going to be like, and then there's now. So how are things different now than what you thought they were going to be?
Yeah. Yeah, really good question. I would say that I could probably have said that at every one of those little turns. From, straight from high school with the drafting, and then to engineering, and to business school with human resources, and then technology management, and the MBA. Let's go focus on my MBA right when my 19-year-old was then a brand new baby. Let's kick that off and get a double MBA, focus in that space. And then a few years later, construction management, because I was in a space where that was the right thing to do. Let's go do that construction management. If you would ask the 16-year-old Kelly, are you going to be doing this? Remember, the 16-year-old Kelly made a decision that she was not going to be an architect because she was not going to go to school for 8 more years. And here 30 years plus later, I'm still going to school, kicked off my doctorate for organizational leadership. I would have never thought that I was continuing to go to school. I feel that the opportunities that are available in education now, and the technology capabilities, here we are the last 100 days or so, where we had to take a quick pivot, right? The world did, where we're remote working, at least in a lot of companies such as myself. I would have never have known that was going to be a capability that was going to be available to us. Number one, to be able to do that kind of remote capability to do your job. Two, to be able to have this world so much smaller than what I thought it was when I was 16 years old. I'm working, like I said, with Australia and Kazakhstan and Nigeria and Angola and all these different places every day. And I would not have known that. So having my eyes wide open to all those other opportunities, that it's not just what you see in front of you, that there's so much more research and availability out there, that which I blame and why I continue to go to school, because I was kind of, wow, how could I not go to school when all of this is such, that you have this research and everything that's available to you right there. So that would be the biggest differences that I would say. Kelly 16 to Kelly now, I would have never have known all of that stuff without continuing that.
Thing to think too, ladies, how differently things are probably going to be when you are getting out into the career world, and throughout your career, how different things are going to be, and to make sure that you are continuing with your education to keep relevant and everything. So Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time with us today to share about your career and everything. We really appreciate it. Ladies, if you've got any questions for Kelly, be sure that you put it down there in the comment section. We'll be sure to get them to her so that way she can respond to you guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.